Lena worked in a small hangar at the edge of the city airport, and she liked how quiet that place felt compared to the loud world around it, because machines did not judge and engines did not speak, and metal never lied to her. She was a mechanic who preferred silence over long talks, and she kept her hair tied back and her hands steady as she worked on old engines brought in by pilots who trusted her skill more than her words. People in the area did not know much about her past, but they knew she fixed things that no one else wanted to touch, and she did it without asking for praise. Lena came from a life where she had learned to solve problems on her own, and every sound inside an engine meant something to her, like a language she understood better than regular conversation. One morning the airport yard was bright with a soft sun, and Lena stood near the open hangar door cleaning her tools. She heard a loud truck approaching, and looked up to see a long transport vehicle rolling toward her hangar. On top of it rested a heavy engine that looked far more advanced than anything she usually worked on. The driver stepped out and asked if she was the mechanic named Lena. She nodded, and the man handed her a paper with a short message that said a jet engine had failed during testing and needed inspection. There was no signature on the paper, and only a company stamp that she did not recognize. Lena felt unsure because the engine looked complicated and far too valuable for someone like her, but curiosity made her walk closer. The engine was large and covered in metal plates shaped in ways she had rarely seen. Some parts were scorched as if they had faced intense heat. She placed her hand on the surface and felt a faint vibration inside, like something alive. The driver told her that his job was only to deliver it, and then he left without saying much more. Lena watched him drive away, and then turned her attention to the machine. She moved it into the hangar with slow care, and once it settled on the workstand she took a deep breath. She reminded herself that every machine had a reason for its failure, and she only needed patience to find it. Lena spent the next hours studying the engine from every angle. She wrote notes in a small book that she always kept in her pocket. She discovered wiring that did not match the structure. She found cracks in a support ring that should have been flawless. She found signs that someone had tried to fix it before but had given up halfway. As she leaned closer she saw a small chip inside a narrow compartment, and that chip pulsed with a soft blue light. She had never seen such a thing. It looked more like something from an experimental lab than a normal aircraft. She wondered what type of company built this engine, and why they trusted a small hangar mechanic like her. While she worked she did not hear a black car stop outside the hangar. She did not see the tall man step out and watch her from a distance. His name was Adrian, and he was the CEO of a large tech company known for building advanced engines for private aircraft. He had sent the engine quietly because he wanted to see how an unknown mechanic handled a machine his own team could not fix. Rumors had reached him that a quiet woman in a small hangar had solved problems that his trained engineers could not understand. Adrian did not believe rumors easily, but he was curious enough to see the truth with his own eyes. Lena finally noticed him when she looked up to stretch her back. She saw a stranger standing near the hangar door, wearing a clean suit, and watching her with interest. She felt confused and slightly nervous, but she gave a small polite nod. Adrian asked if he could step inside, and she agreed. He walked closer and observed the engine as if it were a rare artifact. He asked her what she thought was wrong with it. Lena replied in her simple way, saying the machine had 3 main issues and all of them came from someone forcing parts together that did not belong. Adrian raised a brow because that detail was something even his engineers had missed. He asked her how long she would need to repair it. Lena said she was not sure yet, but she believed the engine could run again if treated with patience. Adrian kept watching her calm approach, and he liked how she spoke with quiet confidence instead of loud promises. He asked her name even though he already knew it. She said her name was Lena, and then she asked who he was. Adrian did not reveal his full position. He only said he was someone interested in her work. She did not question it because she cared more about the machine than the visitor. Lena returned to her inspection, and Adrian stepped aside, watching how she moved with care around the engine. He noticed how she listened to small sounds and tapped lightly on metal plates with her knuckles, as if she could feel the story inside. She worked with focus that made the rest of the world fade. Adrian felt impressed but also wondered why a person with such skill worked alone in a small hangar. He decided not to interrupt her further, and after a short while he said he would return later. Lena gave a brief nod and kept working. When Adrian left the hangar, she let out a breath she had been holding. She did not know why his presence made her feel noticed in a strange way. She shook off the thought and focused again on the engine. She knew the job would take time and effort, but something about the challenge felt right to her. She sensed that solving this engine would open a new path in her life, even if she did not understand how. Outside the hangar, Adrian sat in his car thinking about what he had seen. He had expected a mechanic who followed manuals and repeated methods taught by others. Instead, he found someone who understood engines by instinct, and he realized that he wanted to see what she could achieve with full support. He told his driver to return the next day because he wanted to see the moment she brought the impossible engine back to life. Lena meanwhile continued her work until the sun set behind the far buildings and the hangar lights glowed above her. She cleaned her tools and stood before the engine with a sense of quiet determination. Tomorrow she would begin the real repair, and she hoped her hands would be steady enough for a machine that seemed almost alive. She did not know that her life was already changing, and that the visitor who watched her work would return with more than questions, because he carried a decision that would shape her future in ways she never imagined. The next morning the hangar felt colder than usual, and Lena wrapped her arms around herself as she walked toward the large engine waiting on the workstand. She felt a mix of excitement and worry because she knew the task ahead would test every skill she had. Still, she trusted her hands more than her fears, so she set her tools in a clean row and began her day. The hangar lights hummed softly above her, and the steady sound made her feel calm. She opened the inspection notes she had written last night and read them one more time. Then she opened the engine panel with slow, careful movements because she did not want to damage anything inside. Lena disconnected the outer layers and reached the deeper parts of the machine. She handled the wires with gentle care, and she removed pieces that were loose or burnt. She examined the blue chip again, but she did not touch it yet because she felt it was the key to the entire structure. She spent hours adjusting support plates and cleaning debris from the inner chamber. Every small fix made the machine look a little more alive. She liked seeing progress, even if it came slowly. It reminded her that patience could change everything. Around noon she heard footsteps outside the hangar. Lena looked up and saw the same black car from yesterday. Adrian stepped out and walked toward her with the same calm expression on his face. He greeted her politely, and she responded with a quiet nod. Adrian asked her how the work was going, and she told him she had found 4 new issues, but she believed all of them could be fixed. Adrian smiled slightly because her confidence made him feel hopeful. He asked if she needed anything, but Lena said she only needed time. Adrian stayed near the door at first because he did not want to distract her. He watched how she worked with focus so deep that she barely noticed him. She studied airflow ducts and checked pressure points, and she handled every problem like she was solving a puzzle that belonged to her alone. Adrian thought about the many engineers he had hired over the years. They used advanced tools and spoke with strong claims, but very few of them worked with the natural understanding that Lena carried. He admired how she never boasted about her talent. She simply fixed what needed to be fixed. After some time, Adrian walked closer to her and asked if he could help by handing her tools. Lena paused in surprise but then nodded. She told him which wrench she needed, and he passed it to her carefully. She accepted it and continued working without hesitation. Adrian felt a small sense of pride for being useful, even in a simple way. He liked how Lena treated the machine with respect and how she never rushed her steps. He wanted to learn what she saw in the engine because he believed she could teach his company something new. While Lena worked, she explained her findings in simple words. She said the engine had been designed in a smart way, but someone had added parts from another system which created conflict inside the structure. She said the blue chip was trying to send signals through the wrong channels and the engine resisted the flow. Adrian listened with full attention because her explanation revealed details that his own team had missed. He asked where she had learned such skill, and she replied that she learned by watching engines behave and by fixing old machines that everyone thought were useless. She said she trusted the sound of a machine more than words written in a manual. Adrian felt impressed again. He understood then that Lena was not only skilled but gifted in a rare way. He felt more curious about her and the quiet life she lived in a small hangar. He wondered what had shaped her into someone so patient and strong. He wondered why she had never worked in a larger place where her talent could shine. But he did not ask because he respected her silence. He only said that her work was remarkable. By afternoon, Lena reached the most delicate part of the engine. She finally removed the blue chip and placed it on a clean cloth. Adrian watched as she examined it under a small lamp. She discovered a thin crack running across the surface which explained the unstable signals. She said the chip needed a new core and she knew how to build one from old parts she kept in a box. Adrian raised his brows because he had never seen anyone build a replacement for such a complex piece using old scraps. He stayed quiet as she worked and he felt a strange feeling of admiration growing inside him. Lena built the new core with slow, steady hands. She shaped tiny wires and adjusted the plates until they fit perfectly. She placed the new piece inside the chip and sealed it. Then she reinstalled the chip into the engine. When she connected the wires, the engine released a soft hum as if waking from a long sleep. Lena stepped back and listened with full focus. The hum grew steady and smooth. She smiled a small gentle smile because the machine was responding well. Adrian saw her smile and felt something warm inside him. He told her that the machine sounded healthier than it ever had. Lena nodded and said she was not done yet, but she believed the engine had a chance now. Adrian asked if she had ever worked on something this advanced before. She said no, but she believed that every machine spoke the same language if one learned to listen. Adrian felt moved by her words because he had never thought about machines in such a human way. Evening light filled the hangar with a warm glow as Lena continued adjusting the final parts. Adrian stayed beside her offering tools and sometimes asking questions. She answered them calmly without stopping her work. Her quiet voice matched the steady sounds of the engine and the scene felt peaceful. Adrian felt that he had stepped into a world where skill and calm strength mattered more than titles or wealth. He saw in Lena a person shaped not by pride but by steady purpose. As the sun began to set, Lena finally closed the engine panel. She wiped her hands and stepped back. The machine was not fully ready to run, but it was stable for the first time since its arrival. She planned to test it the next day, and she hoped the engine would respond well. Adrian thanked her for letting him stay and for teaching him things he had never known. Lena felt shy at his words, but she nodded. When Adrian left the hangar, he looked back once more. He saw Lena standing beside the engine with determination in her eyes. He realized that she was more than a mechanic. She was someone who could change the future of engineering if given the chance. He decided that once the engine ran, he would make her an offer that could change her life forever. Lena closed the hangar door and sat on a small stool. She felt tired but also proud of her progress. She placed her hand on the engine and whispered a soft thank you to it for trusting her hands. She did not know that tomorrow would bring a moment that would push her into a world far bigger than the hangar she called home. The next morning arrived with a soft cloudy sky and a cool wind that brushed across the airport yard. Lena unlocked the hangar door and stepped inside with a steady breath. She had slept little because her mind kept thinking about the test she needed to run today. The engine sat in the center of the hangar like a sleeping giant waiting for her touch. Lena ran her fingers across its metal surface and felt the smoothness of the repaired parts. She believed the machine was ready, but she also knew engines could surprise even the most careful mechanic. She checked every wire and connection again. She walked around the engine 3 times, making sure nothing was loose. She placed a thick mat under the testing stand and set up the safety shields she had built from old frames. The hum of the hangar lights filled the air. Everything felt still and quiet. Lena finally connected the power supply and stood before the engine with her hand hovering over the control switch. She whispered a small breath of hope even though she knew the engine could not hear her words. She pressed the switch and stepped back. The engine stayed silent for a long moment, and a small worry formed in her chest. Then a soft vibration moved through the frame, and the machine released a low hum like it was trying to find its voice. Lena watched every movement. The hum grew steady, and the inner lights flickered in a smooth rhythm. The repaired blue chip glowed with a calm blue pulse. Lena felt her chest lighten because the first step had succeeded. She increased the power slowly. The engine responded with strength that surprised her. It was smoother than she expected, and the airflow inside balanced with natural flow. She listened carefully because she knew engines told stories through sound. The story she heard now was one of healing. She kept adjusting the controls, and the engine kept rising step by step until it reached the level required for real testing. A warm feeling spread through her because she knew she had brought something impossible back to life. She heard footsteps and turned to see Adrian standing in the doorway. He looked amazed as he watched the engine run with steady grace. He walked closer but kept a safe distance from the testing zone. He asked if the machine was running fully on her repairs. Lena nodded without taking her eyes off the engine. He said the sound was perfect and he had never heard the model behave so well. The pride in his voice made her feel shy but also happy. Adrian asked if she could increase the power again. Lena hesitated because she knew the engine was strong, but she also respected limits. Still she agreed because she trusted her work. She turned the dial a bit higher. The engine rose in power with smooth confidence. No shaking. No crackling. No warning signs. It spun like something designed for the skies. Adrian stared in amazement as the machine performed better than any prototype his company had built before. After a long stable run, Lena slowly reduced the power until the engine settled back into silence. She walked toward it and placed her hand on the cooling metal. She felt relief wash through her. Adrian clapped his hands once in admiration because he could not hide his reaction. He told her that she had accomplished what a full team of top engineers could not do. Lena shook her head, saying the machine only needed patience and a bit of understanding. Adrian told her that she was being modest. He asked if she would be willing to demonstrate the repair process to his team. Lena looked uneasy because she had never worked in front of a crowd. She said she preferred the quiet hangar. Adrian understood her hesitation, but he also knew her talent deserved more space to grow. He did not push her. Instead, he asked her to let him explain something. He told her his name and his position as the CEO of a large engineering company. Lena froze for a moment because she had not expected him to be someone so important. She stayed quiet, trying to understand why someone like him had stepped into her simple hangar. Adrian said he had sent the engine to her because he believed in testing skill rather than background. He wanted to see what she could do without influence or pressure. When he saw her work, he realized she had a rare kind of talent. He told her that people like her could advance the future of engine design. He asked again if she would consider joining his team, not to replace her quiet life, but to expand her opportunities. He said she would have full freedom in her work and access to tools she had never seen before. Lena did not know how to react. She looked at the engine to steady herself. She had always been content with simple work in the hangar. She liked the silence and the slow rhythm of her days. But she also knew she had dreams she had never spoken aloud. Dreams of building something new. Dreams of seeing machines fly because of her hands. Adrian's offer stirred those hidden dreams in the quiet corners of her heart. Before she could answer, they heard a sudden sharp sound from the engine area. Lena rushed forward with Adrian right behind her. A small spark flickered near one of the backup wires. Lena crouched down and checked the connection. It seemed stable, but she wanted to be certain. She removed the panel again and studied the wiring. Adrian watched her with concern, but she stayed calm. After a few minutes, she found that the wire had been pushed too tightly during the high power run. It needed a slight adjustment, but nothing serious. She fixed it with careful hands. When she stood up, Adrian let out a breath of relief. He told her that the engine trusted her more than anyone else. She smiled a little at his words. She said the machine needed gentle guidance, but it was strong now. Adrian nodded and said she was the one who made it strong. The moment felt warm between them, as if the hangar itself recognized the respect they had begun to share. Adrian asked her again if she would think about joining his company. He said he would not rush her decision. He only wanted her to know that her future could be far larger than the walls of this hangar. Lena looked around at the quiet space she had made her home. She felt the weight of her past and the promise of her future settling on her shoulders. She told Adrian she would think about it carefully. Adrian thanked her for her honesty and said he would return in 2 days to hear her answer. Before leaving, he looked at the engine once more with a deep sense of gratitude. He knew this machine represented more than a repair. It represented the start of something important. Lena stayed in the hangar long after he left. She sat near the engine and let her thoughts flow. She wondered if she was ready to step into a bigger world. She wondered if her quiet nature could survive in a place filled with teams and meetings. But she also remembered the feeling she had when the engine came alive. That feeling of creating something powerful. That feeling of purpose. She placed her hand on the metal and whispered that she would choose the path that felt true to her heart. The hangar lights flickered softly above her as she closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would prepare her answer. Tomorrow her life could change. 2 days passed slower than Lena expected, and the quiet hangar felt different as she waited for Adrian to return. She worked on small repair jobs to keep her hands busy, but her mind kept wandering toward the decision she needed to make. She had lived most of her life inside this hangar fixing old machines for people who trusted her but never fully understood her skill. Now a chance stood before her that could change everything. She felt both excited and afraid because the world Adrian came from felt large and full of noise while her own world was steady and calm. Still, she could not ignore the spark inside her that wanted to grow beyond these walls. That morning she decided to test the repaired engine one more time before he arrived. She checked the wires again and ran the machine at low power. The hum that rose from it felt warm and steady like a heartbeat. She stood beside it for a long moment, feeling a strange connection to the machine she had brought back to life. She remembered the moment it first woke under her hands, and she knew that whatever choice she made now would shape her future. She shut the engine down gently and wiped her hands with a cloth. A few minutes later she heard a car outside and turned to see Adrian walking toward her with the same calm presence, but today his eyes looked a bit hopeful, as if he cared more about her answer than he admitted. He greeted her politely, and she gave a quiet nod in return. Adrian stepped inside the hangar and glanced at the engine with admiration, then he looked at Lena as if her work shone brighter than any machine. He asked if she had thought about his offer. Lena felt her heart tighten because the moment had come sooner than she hoped. She invited him to sit on a small crate near the work table, and she sat across from him. She took a soft breath before speaking. She told him that she had spent years working alone in this hangar because she liked the quiet space where machines spoke to her in their own way. She said she had always been afraid of large places and large teams because she worried she would not fit in. Adrian listened with full respect without interrupting. She said his offer felt big and heavy but also filled with possibility. She had never imagined someone would look at her work and see more than simple repairs. Adrian told her that skill like hers was rare and valuable. He said she had a way of seeing problems that others missed. He said he believed she could lead a new kind of innovation in his company. Lena felt her heart warm at his words, but she also felt the weight of responsibility that came with such a role. She looked at the engine again and tried to imagine herself standing in a large clean lab surrounded by people waiting for her instructions. It felt distant and overwhelming. She told Adrian she was afraid to fail. He shook his head gently and said failure was not the fear she needed to carry. He said learning was part of every journey and she would not walk alone. He said he wanted to give her the space and support she had never received before. Lena watched his face carefully, and she saw sincerity in his eyes. She realized he was not offering her a job for his own gain. He was offering her a future because he believed in her more deeply than she had ever believed in herself. Lena closed her eyes for a moment and listened to the hum of the hangar lights. She thought about all the engines she had fixed and all the nights she spent alone working under dim lamps. She thought about the blue chip she had repaired and the machine that came alive under her hands. She thought about the feeling she had when she solved problems that seemed impossible. She opened her eyes with a new clarity. She told Adrian that she would accept his offer, but only if she could still return to the hangar when she needed quiet space to think. Adrian smiled with genuine warmth and said she would always have that freedom. He said the hangar could remain her second home if she wished. Lena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had feared losing the place that had shaped her, but now she knew she could step forward without leaving everything behind. Adrian stood up and extended his hand. Lena hesitated before placing her hand in his because she was not used to such gestures, but she did not pull away. His handshake felt steady and respectful. Adrian walked toward the engine and said he wanted to hear the full story of her repair process so he could explain it properly to his team. Lena walked over and explained each step in her simple way. She told him how the blue chip signaled through the wrong channels and how she had rebuilt its core. She showed him the wires she had adjusted and the plates she had reshaped. Adrian listened with full attention. He admired how she spoke with clarity without trying to sound complicated. She explained everything through sound and movement because she understood the machine more like a companion than a tool. After she finished explaining, Adrian said that her insight could change the direction of their engineering projects. He said her approach was fresh and honest, and he wanted others to learn from her. Lena felt shy at his praise, but she also felt proud because her work had finally found someone who appreciated it. Adrian asked if she wanted to come to the company headquarters that very afternoon to meet a few team members. Lena paused but then nodded because she knew delaying would only bring more worry. They closed the hangar, and Adrian drove her to the company building in his car. She sat quietly in the back seat watching the city pass by. She noticed tall buildings and busy streets she rarely visited. She felt nervous but not overwhelmed because she knew Adrian was beside her. When they reached the headquarters, she stepped out slowly. The building was tall and covered with clear glass panels that reflected the sky. She felt small for a moment, but then she reminded herself that she had fixed something no one else could. Inside the building, people walked with quick steps carrying documents and devices. Adrian guided her through the corridors until they reached a large lab filled with tools and screens. A few engineers looked up in surprise when they saw their CEO enter with a quiet woman who looked nothing like the usual candidates they met. Adrian introduced her as the mechanic who repaired the impossible engine. The engineers stared in disbelief. Lena felt nervous, but she kept her posture steady. Adrian asked her to explain the process. She walked to a model engine on the table and demonstrated the repairs she made on the real machine. She used simple words that the engineers found surprisingly clear. As she spoke, they leaned closer with interest. Some of them began nodding. Others whispered to each other in amazement. They realized she had solved a flaw no one in the company could identify. For the first time, Lena felt a spark of confidence inside her. She was not a visitor here. She was someone who belonged. After the demonstration, Adrian guided her outside the lab. He asked if she felt comfortable. Lena said she felt nervous but also proud. He told her that pride was well earned. He said her life had just stepped into a new chapter. She felt a warm wave of emotion because she knew he was right. As they drove back to the hangar that evening, Lena looked out at the darkening sky. She felt different inside. Not louder but stronger. She knew she would keep her quiet nature, but now she also knew she had a voice that mattered. She had stepped into a world she once feared and found a place within it. The hangar waited for her like an old friend when they arrived. She stepped out of the car and touched the metal door. She felt gratitude for the place that shaped her and hope for the future she was about to enter. Adrian stood beside her and told her that this was only the beginning. Lena believed him because the world suddenly felt wide enough for her dreams.